Hi, welcome to In Sync, the podcast that explores the history and impact of some of your favorite music moments in TV and film. I'm your host, Rachel Brodsky.
And I am Spartacus.
Aviv, that was perfect.
Thank you.
Last week's episode explored the classic 1996 comedy film, That Thing You Do. We talked about the making of Tom Hanks' directorial debut and the unlikely story of how Adam Schlesinger's now famous title song was picked out of literally hundreds of submissions to soundtrack the movie.
In this week's B-side episode, we're talking to actor Tom Everett Scott, star of That Thing You Do, about his breakout role as Guy Shades / Skitch / Spartacus Patterson. You don't necessarily have to have listened to last week's episode to enjoy this one, but we recommend going back and listening anyway.
Yes, Aviv, I've found that a hit record is like a stew. All of the ingredients have to come together just right. Otherwise, it's just soup.
And on that note, here's our chat with Tom, a very good sport who wore his own pair of shades along with us for the first 5 or so minutes of this conversation.
You definitely get the Good Sport Award for humoring us with the shades.
Tell us about the shades.
Okay, so I love that you guys have your shades on, so then I have to put mine on. And these are from the Erie Seawolves, Erie, Pennsylvania, where the Oneaters are from, obviously. There's an actual minor league baseball team there that had a Wonders Day. And Steve Zahn and Jonathan Check and myself went up. Ethan couldn't go. And we went up when we threw out the first pitch, and we helped raise a bunch of money for Music Cares. Yeah.
That is...
Oh, that's great.
Just delightful.
Or not Music Cares. Sorry, we did Music Cares when we did, like, during the pandemic, we did, like, a watch-along.
Yeah. I remember that.
Then we did a different charity for the baseball thing. We did Jonathan's charity for dyslexia.
Oh, amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think we probably have to start with a very serious and important question, which is, how did we get here, Sketch?
That should be the name of my podcast.
You can have that.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
You'll get credited. How did we get here? I don't know. I mean, how did we get where, and what are we talking about?
Well, we've just been talking for maybe 90 minutes or so about That Thing You Do and the monumental rise of both the movie and the song, and unlikely success in terms of finding its place in the cultural landscape without necessarily being like a huge box office smash.
It did achieve that. That was nice. I think that as a 25-year-old starting out as an actor and getting my opportunity with my idol, Tom Hanks, I certainly thought I was already, winning. I was already, something great was happening for me, and it didn't really matter how successful the movie was. Of course, you do want it to be a success, and then it didn't really perform at the box office. That was strange.
Was that a surprise for the people involved? And do you all think it was going to be this massive smash hit?
Sure. I had high hopes. It's crazy. Like, I'm going back to a time when I was really just so naive and didn't know anything about the industry. So I was definitely a moviegoer. I knew that movies had to perform well. I knew that you didn't want to have a bomb at the box office. You didn't want to have a stinker. We knew the movie was good. It's funny because what was number one at the box office was
First Wives Club, right?
Yeah.
First Wives Club.
Totally makes sense. There's 3 megastars in it.
True.
Right?
It has a good needle drop in it.
It does. Although it's funny because there's been, at least from my vantage point, like an inversion. Because although people do love First Wives Club, it still feels of a certain time. And I'm not sure it has stood the test of time quite to the extent that That Thing You Do has. And I was going to ask you if you've noticed an uptick in interest, because it's on Hulu now. I think it's That Thing You Do is the sort of film that you will no doubt see on like HBO or Netflix or Hulu, and it's always sort of surfing the streaming sites. And so, given that it's, I think, been so available, have you noticed an uptick culturally because of that?
I have always felt that the movie just does really well, and it's just an enjoyable film. People have always said that, and that it's their favorite movie or whatever. And yeah, we're taking the shades off, but we're not losing the spirit. We just need to be able to see.
I was trying to do it subtly.
I'm glad you did, Aviv, because I had to.
Now I can see you guys. Yeah. So when the movie tested, it tested across the board as, performing well with every single group. And I remember talking to the guys at Playtone. It wasn't Playtone yet. That they formed Playtone. Tom and Gary Getzman formed it after That Thing You Do, obviously based on Playtone, the record label. But Gary Getzman, who's Tom Hanks' producing partner and produced That Thing You Do, he was like, you know what? Maybe that was the problem, is that it just did so well with every group. You couldn't zero in on one group and have that group come to the theater in droves. I mean, I guess that's how you think about it back then in the box office days. And then after it had left the theaters and it would still come back, or come back on DVD, or come back on, various TV screens, people would be like, oh, we watch this every time it's on. It's a remote drop movie. I remember my friend who on the business side was like, well, I'm, have a job as an acquisition person at this new network. And the first movie we, licensed was That Thing You Do. And I was like, oh, really? And she said, because everyone's going to want to watch it. So that's when I kind of realized that it had legs. To answer your question, I don't really know whether it's because it's available all the time, which it is. Mm-hmm. That's always a good thing. Mm-hmm. But also I just think that it's just a real feel-good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It has a bit of a bite to it, more so than other kind of schmaltzy feel-good, like to Disney Touchstone movies.
Yeah. I don't think it is schmaltzy, even though.
No, I don't think so either.
It's got a lot of real. I mean, kids can, not to interrupt you, Aviv, but
how dare you?
Kids can, I mean, I saw it earlier in the episode. We talked about how I saw it on my 10th birthday party, but you grow with it, and it grows with you.
You do grow with it. And as I've gotten more jaded, I understand the doomed fate of the wonders. Matt Damon, when he was on Hot Ones, talked a little bit about the landscape of movies in the mid 90s, specifically, I think, as it pertained to like Rounders, where you could count on ancillary markets. You can count on DVD releases or VHS releases to like have a second life for movies. And especially with a movie like That Thing You Do, the soundtrack had such a huge funnel or a huge feeder into people's love of the movie. A movie like The Shawshank Redemption also famously didn't do well at the box office and then had such a long tail on home video. Can you talk a little bit about being a part of the music side of this phenomenon that allowed it to become this remote drop movie years later?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can just go to what I experienced, which was first reading the script and realizing that there was going to be a song that had, the title, That Thing You Do, and it was going to play several times throughout the movie. So my brain definitely was thinking like, well, what will that be? That'll be some original song. That's kind of interesting. And then I got cast in the movie, which is, phenomenal. And I was really kind of having an out-of-body experience. And then I go to LA to film this, I'm shooting this TV show called Grace Under Fire, which I was recurring on. Mm-hmm. And Tom and Gary said, come stop by the production office. We're in pre-production. And so that was fun. And I go over there and they're like, maybe we'll give you like a little drum lesson while you're here. And I went to some recording studio in the Valley. And then they were like, we're delivering the drum set. Then the drum kit appeared and then they played the song. And that was the first I ever heard of it. So here was this like vintage, kit, delivered by some guy named the Drum Doctor, who I'm friends with now and helps me like keep my drums
the Drum Doctor
in shape. Yeah, dude. Yeah. And then he arrived with Jimmy Keltner, who's one of his buddies. And Jimmy Keltner's like one of the greatest drummers of all time. He was George Harrison's drummer. And, so I'm freaking out, and we all are. And they're setting up the kit and we're listening to Adam Schlesinger's song. And then Gary's saying, there were 300 submissions. For us. Yeah. And Tom and Gary wrote a version that, they were proud of and they liked it, but obviously they loved Adam's the most. And then I got sent back to New York, where I lived for a month before coming back out to play with the band for another month. So it was 2 months of music rehearsal before we even started shooting. But that month in New York on my own with my drum teacher was when I also listened to Little Wild One, Dance With Me Tonight, All My Only Dreams. Like I learned 5 songs and then I learned 5 versions of That Thing You Do.
What was the learning curve like for you? This was actually a little when I was researching, a little tricky to get clarity on in terms of who was playing what. I mean, did you have a body double, like, or was it you kind of on the sticks like 90 to 100% of the time?
It's me 100% of the time. There was no drum double, which, you know, like going into it, I thought they're going to want a drum double. You know, they're going to want. I even put forth like a friend of mine. I was like, this guy Josh Karras, he's a drummer and he looks like me. And then they were like, interesting. But Tom was like, I hired actors and we'll figure out the music thing later. So.
No pressure.
And my audition, he looked on the back of my headshot was my resume, and under special skills, I had trumpet. And he was like, is this true? Because I'm an actor. I know that could be untrue. And I said, no, it's true. I played for like years in junior high and high school. And he said, okay, so you have some sense of, music and rhythm and stuff like that. And actually,
you can transfer this.
Totally. My drum teacher wrote all my parts out on sheet music, and I did read all my parts. That was super helpful.
And you didn't just do because there is such a difference between like a more straightforward pop song like That Thing You Do and the B-sides that you mentioned earlier. And then you're playing these jazz solos as well.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So my teacher, Billy Ward, he said, I'm not going to teach you how to play the drums. We're not going to learn paradiddles. We're not going to do like hours of stick control. I'm going to show you how to hold the sticks and look cool. And we're going to learn the songs. I was like, great, let's do it. So and I did it 7 days a week. I did it 8 hours a day. He would rehearse with me as much as I wanted, which would be up to like 2 hours a day. And then I would just fill the rest of the time in a studio production would rent me a studio. So I had full access. And even when I wasn't at the drums, I was like on the subway, just trying hands and feet, trying to get my parts. And I will say I learned all those songs. Like I made it my mission to not look fake. And I must have been a drummer in another life because I couldn't do it at first.
You don't look fake.
And right. I couldn't do it at first. And then I learned how to do it. I don't think it would sound like a real drummer, but I made it look as much like a real drummer as I could. And the jazz stuff, the first time we shot the I Am Spartacus thing at the end, it was too hard. And we filmed it anyway. And I was so disappointed with what I was doing. It was super hard solo. Yeah. And the craziest thing is that all the footage from the first time we passed through that Del Paxton thing in the studio, it all came back out of focus. It was some lens problem.
Kismet.
And we lost that location of that studio, Sunset Recording Studio. And we had to rebuild the whole thing at Fox. So I got another crack at it, which I couldn't believe. And I said, this time, guys, I just want to change the solo if I can. Is there something we can do to make it a little easier for me to play? And we had my drum teacher, Billy Ward, come and record something. And that's what you hear is Billy Ward playing the I Am Spartacus thing, and he knew what I could handle, and it was mostly like triplets. It's like da 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 da, and that's that whole thing. And he incorporated in the actual drums from That Thing You Do, that boom, bop, bop, doom, digga, digga. That's the lead into That Thing You Do, and then he jazzes it up.
I read that your rap gift was actually the drum set.
Yeah, Tom's standing there. We're in that rebuilt recording studio at Fox, and it's my last day. And Tom's standing there next to me, and he goes, "Are you sad?" I was like, "Yes, of course I'm sad." And he said, "Are you sad you're never going to play these drums again?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, this was the greatest. It's like the Cadillac of drums." And he said, "Well, they're yours." And I was just like, "What?" And they appeared in New York City on the Upper West Side of my apartment in, drum boxes.
Where you can definitely fit a drum set in your
not at all
Upper West Side apartment.
Some third floor walk up. The UPS guy was like,
right. And is this drum set something that is still in your possession?
It's here. It's not in this room that I'm recording in. It's in the room behind me. But yeah, it's here. I had it set up. It goes through periods of being in boxes and being set up depending on who wants to get their frustration out and play the drums.
In the oral history from The Ringer, which is a great resource for us, they said that Mr. Hanks, he would kind of sing his way through making up these 60s era songs, and he sang through I Am Spartacus, or he came up with the original, very difficult fill for I Am Spartacus. How did he communicate that to you all on set?
Yeah, I don't know how much of the drum solo he had a part of, but he definitely sang the piano part to the guy who played it and who was there on set. And that was funny because that musician who's playing the piano And then Bill Cobb comes in and fakes it. But that musician, and I forget his name, I wish I remembered it, but he saved Tom singing onto his like answering machine, back when we had answering machines, that whole piano bit. I think Tom did a lot of that kind of thing with all the music where he sang it or played it on guitar or piano. Because Tom's a Renaissance man, let's face it. He's probably one of the most talented performers of our day. And he wrote all those songs, except for That Thing You Do.
Right. Your experience working with Tom as one of your first major working experiences, it kind of makes me think of my first job, my first full-time job out of college, where I had like the best boss ever. And there were other things about that job that made me not want to say, but she was not one of them. I just loved her. She had all this crazy experience. She'd like worked at Vogue. She'd worked at like Harper's Bazaar. And I was like, I want to learn from this person. That being said, the downside was that she set such a high bar for bosses that I didn't even know what like the world of bad bosses could be like after departing from her presence. So I wondered, like, did working with Tom, Mr. Hanks, in the time since That Thing You Do, like, what has been kind of the ups and downs and learning experiences that you've had in terms of who your director is? Like, did Mr. Hanks just set this like bar for you? And like, what was it like to kind of go from there?
Yeah, he set the bar for not only directors that I would then work for, but just anybody in charge of anything ever. He approached this in such a great way because he knew what we were going through as actors, obviously. He would always say things like, you can do no wrong, which is such a great, direction and mantra on a film set. He just wanted to create a comfortable atmosphere where you felt like you could just try stuff. Yeah, he taught me how to act on camera. He stood on my mark for my first big close up and said, go ahead and look through the lens and I'll stand on your mark and you can see like what this, and it was like this tight, like in on my face. And he was like, your nostrils will be as big as Buicks, up on the screen. And I was like, okay. And so less is more. And so you can do no wrong and less is more were kind of like the mantra. He did a lot of things where he saw me kind of just overwhelmed with over 100 people working in a room and me kind of not knowing what my role is. And he just said, come on, let's go outside. And I was, get out of here, get some air. And we're on the church steps where the band records with Guy's uncle. And we're out on the church steps. And he said, which is kind of brilliant, a little metaphor. And he's like, just do your part. Just do your job. You're a cog in a machine and all you have to worry about is your job and you'll be fine. So he set the bar, but he also kind of set me off on my path.
Mm.
There is a story that you did do wrong at one point. That all of the wonders at one point showed up about 10 minutes late.
Yeah, Ethan was the only one who wasn't late. And Ethan was otherwise, the unknown motto of the movie is, where's Ethan? Because he would just kind of like wander off. And he was like,
living up to TV players.
He wasn't even 18 yet. He was a 17-year-old and just... Yeah, me and Steve and Jonathan, who, otherwise were really, really professional and on time and knew all our shit. And then there was one day where the three of us were all late for some crazy reason.
Were you out partying the night before? Like, what? Set the record straight. No, it just happened.
I can speak for me and Steve because we lived in the same complex in the marina. We lived at the Oakwood Furnished Living. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we would catch a ride every day. And we both overslept and our van was waiting for us, but we knew we were in trouble. And then it was crazy because Jonathan, who lived in West Hollywood, he was also late that day. And it was the day of, probably the talent show performance. So it was a big day.
Yeah.
We felt horrible. So Tom didn't say anything to us directly that I remember. Everyone's story is a little different. I remember Gary pulling us aside and saying, you can't ever do that again.
Yeah, we saw Tom is very disappointed.
Tom's very disappointed in you.
That was crushing.
I would walk into the ocean.
I know. Does that just like make you want to walk off a cliff? Like to know that like America's dad is not mad. He's just disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole day you're just like, he hates me. And how can I make this up to him? And I'll prove it to him. I'll show him. He never once showed us that he was angry ever.
That's good. Do you think that based on your role as kind of the emotional center of the film and your passing resemblance to Tom Hanks, which almost didn't get you the part, according to legend. Do you think that Tom favored you? I mean, you got the same name. You're Tom Jr. at this point.
Yeah. It made me like wish my name wasn't Tom at that moment. Like, when you want something so bad and you're just like picking it apart, like how can this not happen? Ooh, because I'm Tom. That's why it won't happen.
Have you listened to Dead Eyes?
No, I haven't. I know about it.
Connor Ratliff does that whole thing about the part that he lost. He's like, I stepped forward with my left foot and I shouldn't have done that.
Right. But it was because he had the dead eyes.
Yeah, it was because he had the dead eyes.
I have to listen to that. Okay.
It's very, very good.
Oof. All right. It's going to traumatize me.
And he has David Moscow, another, young Tom Hanks on the show.
Dave and I were pals before That Thing You Do.
Oh, no shit.
We had the same agent in New York and did a Coke commercial together or something like that. And then we became pals.
He's an interesting dude.
Yeah. Yeah. His book is really good.
Oh, I should get it.
It's called From Scratch. And he does a show where he goes to different locations and chefs will say, like, this is the meal. And then you kind of got to, and then David goes out and forages for the meal. It's great.
I've seen clips, video of that. But in the extended version of the film, Guy's a little bit more complicated and he has more shades than just the like nice guy. Can you talk about what you brought to the role of Guy that maybe didn't make the final cut?
Oh, that's a great question. Gosh, there's so many things I want to like answer about that. Because I kind of want to get back to what you guys said earlier when I said, it's a feel good movie and you said it has some bite. It made me think, that's actually why it's so good, is because it's not just some like happy go lucky movie. There is, Tom's sense of humor has bite to it. It's like every great comic you listen to, you're like, oh, they're hilarious. They're also angry. They're also like, commenting on life. And
yeah.
There was a lot about Guy. The initial script had them going to a summer camp and chasing kids covered in Benadryl all over not Benadryl. What was the stuff the orange stuff you put on mosquito bites? Not Benadryl.
Calamine lotion.
Calamine lotion. Calamine lotion was a big part of the first draft.
Because he worked at like summer stock. Hanks did, right?
Yeah.
So
yes, I think you're right. And it was a callback to that. And it had, this movie had a whole journey that, Tom, you guys should get Tom on this podcast, by the way.
Well,
yeah, man, let's call him in.
Yeah.
Is that like when my family says, you should do a Marvel movie? And I'm like, yeah.
Right. You should call and see if Saturday Night Live is hiring.
That's awesome.
So Tom first started off with me saying, I cast you in this because I really thought, one of the things I did in the audition when he asked me what I thought, I said, well, this guy's me. This is me. We're parallel characters, but it's acting and music. And I'm just identifying with Guy, which I did in my little apartment in Manhattan, starting out waiting tables, failing at all that stuff, but trying to be an actor. I really saw this connection to Guy wanting to be a musician. And then when I got it, and Tom told me the whole thing about how he wasn't going to hire me because I looked like him. And then Rita was the one who watched the tape and said, you should cast this guy. So, Rita's my best friend. And then when we started, he said, I just don't want, just be you. I cast you. You might have a tendency to like do stuff the way I do it. And because we're trying to avoid this whole like look-alike thing, just don't do anything the way I do it. And I was like, all right, well, just don't do anything so funny that I have to follow, you being you. And he's like, deal, no problem. And he broke that promise toward the end at the hotel at the Ambassador. It didn't make the movie, but it made the final cut. Guy gets really drunk. Guy gets really, really drunk that night that he meets
Del
Paxton.
Spot? Yeah.
At the Blue Spot. But in the extended version where he comes back to the hotel and you see Mr. White with Howie Long's character.
The weirdest casting in the entire movie.
Tom grew up in the Bay Area and is a massive like Oakland Raiders fan. There are several Oakland and Raiders references in the movie. And so, yeah, like Philip Villapiano was like a famous Raider football player.
Oh my God, I never even put that together.
You guys lost me now.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Coming back. So Guy's drunk and he goes, and Tom says, this is what I want you to do. When you get out of your cab, I want you to walk up this carpet to the front door of the Ambassador Hotel and you don't even see the door. And Tom did it. He just hit the door hard and fell straight back flat, and like everyone died. It was the greatest pratfall you've ever seen. And I looked at him and I was like, you suck. I'll never be able to be that funny. And we did it. And several concussions later, I got it. And we did it. We shot that scene. It was great. We did it. It was with Howie, and Rita was also in that moment. And I don't know. I forget. I honestly haven't seen the director's cut enough because I don't really remember.
I can lend you my DVD. I also want to shout out the drummer of my own band, whose favorite movie is That Thing You Do, and was inspired to pick up the drums because of your performance. And I asked him what I should ask you, and he said, "Ask him why Guy is such a dick in the extended version."
Gosh, what? Is he?
I rewrote it to make it a little sweeter, but that one's for Rick.
I'm just not going to watch the extended version now because I haven't seen it, and Guy to me only exists as like a beacon of perfection.
That's so sweet. Wait, now hold on a second. Who says Guy's a dick?
Talk directly to Rick. Cut? His name is Rick. He's a drummer and an editor. You lay into him.
I'm going to lay into him.
You don't hold back.
I want to, with an open mind, I want to like hear it. I want to hear the take.
He's a little self-centered with his interactions with Charlize too.
Well,
where he's like in the extended version where he's just like so obsessed with jazz and so obsessed with his work with the Oneaters that like it is a little bit more of a foregone conclusion that she's going to leave him and he kind of deserves it.
Well, I mean, is he a dick or are they just poorly matched?
They just don't work together.
This movie launched you as kind of the good-hearted everyman that you got to play opposite Liv Tyler, aka Faye, Emma Stone in La La Land, which we'll ask you about in a minute, Julie Delpy, and my personal favorite as Andrea Savage's husband in I'm Sorry, very underrated I'm Sorry. Huge fan of that part and that show.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about any responsibility you might have felt or pressure? Like, did you at any point feel like, maybe there was like a typecast at work, or did you feel any pressure being as like kind of showing up to be on this nice guy platform for audiences moving past the film, That Thing You Do?
I think that I was happy to be cast, in any lead role. I wasn't like really even thinking about it in that way. And I think as an actor, I wanted to also have range. So yeah, I wanted to be able to do more than just the nice guy thing, but I wasn't going to turn down any work. And talk to Tom early on after That Thing You Do about like jobs that were coming up for me. And he said, just keep working. Like, working is the most important thing. It all sorts itself out. You can be precious about something and be totally wrong. You can overthink something and be totally wrong about it when you see the final product or over time. And I thought it was really sound advice. Now that there's evidence that I am a dick in the extended version, now I feel this pressure to like really get that out there so that I can get more of those roles.
Put that in your reel.
Yeah. I just approach things every job. I just kind of approach it job to job. Like I'm at a point in my career now where, just trying to like keep it rolling, getting good stuff is like a bonus. If it's actually like quality film that people want to see, that is such a bonus. Most of the stuff that I'm doing right now, to be quite honest, is like, okay, I got to pay for college for my kids and, mortgage and that kind of thing. Doesn't mean that I don't enjoy acting. I love it. It's my favorite thing to do in the world. I'm so lucky that I get to do what I love. Definitely a different person than I was when I started out in terms of my understanding of how it works, but I'm no less like excited to be an actor. It's just not always going to be that thing you do. It's like, that's kind of a tough one to top.
Real quick, I just want to throw in like a little anecdote. So our first episode of this podcast is about the show 6 Feet Under, the final episode using Sia's Breathe Me. And one of my first celebrity sightings, if you will, in Los Angeles when I moved here in 2017 was Frances Conroy. from 6 Feet Under. I'm obsessed with her. That's one of my favorite. Ruth Fisher's one of my favorite characters of all time. And I almost never want to approach anybody because I don't want to I don't want to disturb them. I mean, they're just going about their day buying groceries, but I did. She was alone, and I very briefly just approached her and was like, I am such a big fan of your work. Please keep doing what you do. And she just kind of was like, oh, well, it's just so good to get work. It's just so good to, and that I was like, Frances Conroy, that's what you're saying. Like, the Frances Conroy, really? Like,
so true.
That sentiment. That's what I hear the most across the board.
I can identify with that whole thing you just said, from approaching celebrities to her response. It's all true. Yeah, somebody said that to me early on. They were like, approaching celebrities is like matchmaking your friends. It seems like a good idea, but you probably shouldn't do it.
Unlike me, who just hucked a microphone at you over your fence on
You did.
You did. Hey, Tom, what's up?
Here. That's, we had a history. I don't mind when people come up to me. It depends on the situation. It depends on how they do it. Obviously, if I'm sitting at dinner with my family, I don't want someone coming up to me and being an asshole. But as an example, in the gym, I was going to the gym and I'm in the men's locker room getting changed, and a guy comes up to me and I'm like, I don't know if this is the right time.
If you have to ask,
not ideal.
But he was such a sweetheart about it. He was like, you got any more great work coming out? And I was like, oh, I hope so. I hope you like it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm working all the time. He's like, well, I really love what you do. And I was like, thank you. That was sweet. In our towels.
Speaking of great work, and speaking of kind of the reappraisal or the new perspective that you have on your work that you did in the 90s, in the Disney Plus movie Clouds from 2020, directed by Justin Baldoni, you got to recreate everyone's favorite scene from That Thing You Do, where they hear the song on the radio for the first time. Can you tell us a little bit about how that scene came to be? I mean, clearly they didn't do it by accident, but how did you reapproach that with this new 25 years later perspective?
So Justin said, I had this idea and I just want to run it by you first and see if you are okay with this. So that was very respectful and cool of him. But he was like, that's such an iconic scene, and we want to do that with Zach's song playing on the radio. If anyone listening doesn't know, Clouds is about the real life story of a boy who died, but he recorded a song and it did very well. It was a great song, Clouds. And the movie's great. His life should be celebrated. He was just a very sweet, positive person who died really young from cancer. And it's just great. Clouds on Disney. And recreating that scene was so fun. I also got to do it with, Neve Campbell, who, I was geeking out about working with her. So we just had fun jumping around and recreating that scene. It was cool.
I just love when actors geek out over meeting each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the strange meta experience. It's fun to witness that. Yeah.
No, I love it. And you always just cross your fingers and hope that they're going to be cool, because you don't know what you're going to get.
You can tell us who's not cool. We won't. Yeah, it's just us.
Well, you can say off the record, and then we won't put it.
You know who sucks? Tom Hanks. Rachel, do you want to talk about the other meta moment for Skitch Patterson?
Well, okay. So I gotta say, before we sat down for this interview, I rewatched La La Land just because it had been a while, and I wanted to see your role in it. And legend has it that you were offered La La Land because Damien Chazelle loved That Thing You Do. And also there's a central jazz theme. We wondered, how does That Thing You Do continue to affect areas of your life in ways that surprise you?
That's a great example of that, because I was so thrilled to be offered that role. And I loved Whiplash.
Masterpiece.
Yeah, Miles Teller's phenomenal actor. J.K. Simmons, the whole thing. It's great. Love Emma Stone. I was just so excited to be in Damien Chazelle's movie.
And Emma Stone, we hear, really loved you.
Yeah, we had a great time. She's awesome.
Yeah.
She's so sweet. We had such a fun time. And RG. I like to call him RG. Ryan Gosling is such a sweetheart. And for the brief moment that we got to work together, even though we never really did any scenes together, all that nightclub stuff, jazz club, Sebs, welcome to Sebs. We had fun. You guys La La Land fans? I'm a fan of that movie.
I
do like that movie.
I am, because I I didn't move to Los Angeles with like the hopes of acting, but I did move here with hopes of like career stuff in this amorphous sense because I do work in entertainment. So as a dreamer and a romantic and someone who's like dated my husband's a musician and
okay.
Yeah. So La La Land taps into my innate romanticism. So it's hard, even though I'm not like a big musical person, but yeah, I liked it.
Yeah.
I think Whiplash is like undeniably a masterpiece. And I think La La Land is such a expanded scope and like lives up to the hype for the most part. And yeah, your appearance in La La Land, I like clutched my pearls because, you know, it was the guy Patterson and she found another jazz guy to replace Ryan Gosling's character.
It's crazy. I didn't even think about that. And I'm not kidding. I did not think about that at all. I didn't make any connection to That Thing You Do at all. I got offered the part. I read the script. I was like, oh, cool. You know, like I'll be that solid guy that I can see why Deb Aquila, who cast me in Dead Man on Campus. And we've been friends over the years. And so she ran into me at a restaurant and she was like, I have something for you. And I was like, okay. So what had happened was she suggested me to Damien. He said, is he available? I'm available, guys. I'm totally available. If anybody has that question, is Tom Everett Scott available for a Damien Chazelle movie? The answer is yes. So I was like, yeah, amazing. Deb, thank you for putting me forward. And he was like, I'm a huge That Thing You Do fan. So I didn't know that until I get to the read through. And then he's like, yeah, me and my fiance, one of the things that was like the make or break point in our relationship was we were on a long road trip, got the playlist on, driving, talking, having a great time. Everything's going well. But I know that next up is That Thing You Do. And I don't know whether to skip it or let it play and see what she thinks. So he just threw caution to the wind. He let That Thing You Do play. And she said, oh my God, this is my favorite song, my favorite movie, whatever. And that's when he knew that he could marry this person. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's very sweet. He's like, and so That Thing You Do is a big part of my life. And he's made it his mission to, I mean, Ethan Embry is in the Ryan Gosling.
First Man. Yeah.
First Man. Thank you. Ethan's one of the astronauts in that. You know, I mean, I think he wants to like work with Steve. I think he wants to live. Charlotte, you know, I mean,
he's working his way through
through the wonders.
Exactly. Through the Plato and Galaxy of Stars.
It's amazing.
And so I never put it two and two together until the movie actually came out. And I saw somebody tweet something like, of course, Guy Patterson's in the jazz club at the end of La La Land. And I was like, whoa.
Did you like create? I know sometimes actors, even when the audience doesn't get a backstory for a character, like an actor will create a backstory internally. Is that something that you did with your character for La La Land or not particularly?
We just sat down and talked about it. Like, okay, what do you think he does for a living? Oh, it's probably something very stable, something you want, you know, Emma's character to be moving on to somebody very different than Seb.
Safe.
Yeah. So we just talked about that. And, you know, what I focus on, and this is just my process, is that in that movie, in the moment of those scenes, I am there for her. Like we're going to go out on a date. It's going to be a great night. You know, I mean, that's what I want, you know, and that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. I will say before we move on that I did make my husband watch Whiplash because I just wanted to see how he would respond. He went to music school. He went to Berklee School of Music in Boston, and he didn't make it all the way through because apparently it's like there's this like strange law of the like music school universe that if you don't graduate, then somehow you're like you become more successful because you had like better things in school going on. Because he talks sometimes about how like jazz and like theory focused and ultimately kind of boxy music school can be. And I was like, I know I'm not saying that this is anything that Whiplash is your experience at Berklee, but like, what does it mean to you? What does it make you feel? Is it making, because like I'm definitely sweating the whole time while watching it. And for my husband, he was just like, nah, I would have just left. I would just walked out. Like, I don't want this. Yeah.
That is also Taylor, right? Taylor's just like, whatever, man.
Yeah, no, he is on his own journey, and that's why, like, you know, that's why we love each other.
I will say, as great as Whiplash was when I first saw it, and I did feel that fake drummer competition, and you know, definitely I was watching that him like, okay, all right, he's got some chops. No, just kidding. I am though more like La La Land. I'll go back to and watch as an audience member more than any other Damien Chazelle movie. I did enjoy First Man. I thought that was underrated.
La La Land is more life affirming than Whiplash or
Babylon,
which is
true,
bleak.
Yeah.
speaking of Damien Chazelle and his moment with his eventual wife, I'm not a drummer. But whenever the song comes on the radio or more likely my Spotify, I have to drum along with that intro specifically. Mm-hmm. What happens to you when you hear the song?
The thing you do?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, let's just put it this way. I've heard it more times than anyone else, other than the people who did post-production on That Thing You Do. I love it. It's there. It's a big part of my life. So we did a reunion where me and Ethan and Jonathan, Steve was unavailable. One of these days we'll get all four Oneaters together for the same thing. But Steve couldn't make this one thing we did at the Roxy, where we actually got up on stage and backed up this comedian, Josh Adam Myers. So we had to go back to the rehearsal studio. And Ethan turned to me and he's like, I hate this song. And I was like, you don't. No, you don't. He goes, well, you know what I mean. And I'm like, I get exactly what you mean. Like, we don't hate it. We love it. But he meant like having to like play it again. Like he's got a hard bass part. The drums aren't that hard. I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't know what the answer is other than.
Are you four the only people on the planet who have managed to become sick of that song? Because for everyone else, it's still there.
And Ethan, if you're listening, I know you don't really hate this song, but you did say you were sick of it, so I'm calling you out. I can't say that I'm sick of it. I still get joy if other people have joy. Like I was in Montreal, we're filming Clouds, the music supervisors and a bunch of us went out to have a night out and we wind up karaokeing. And of course they're like, come on, we got to sing That Thing You Do on stage. And you know what? Because they were so excited and happy, I'm in on that. Like that's going to make me happy. I'm jumping around. I'm singing the harmonies. It's fun. If you see me, Jonathan and Steve, if you see us singing it at the minor league baseball game in Erie, like we're just fully into it. It's all good memories for us.
I love that. So I lived in Harrisburg as a kid, and like half of what summer camps would do is just take us to minor league Senators games. So if I had been a kid and like seen something like that, or if I've seen something like that as an adult, I would, plots.
And if Jonathan or Steve are ever not available, I volunteer as tribute to come fill in for them.
Okay.
Because I got it up here.
What instruments do you play?
I play guitar and bass.
Oh, look at that. Oh,
so yeah.
Yeah, utility man. We got
Ethan's part is a little difficult for me because it walks so much.
Yes.
And he plays it with a pick, which is it's a lot.
He's rad.
But Ethan's a really good musician.
Ethan's rad. He was like the guy who, out of the group, we were like looking to. Because he was a guitarist, but he picked up the bass pretty easily.
Have you seen him in Cheap Thrills?
No.
The performance of his like adult career. It is. Oh, he's incredible in it.
Okay. I'm gonna watch it.
Him and David Koechner. Very, very, very good.
Love Koechner. Okay. Yeah. Cheap Thrills.
Let's talk about the lasting impression Being in the Wonders left on you. Is it true that Steve Zahn was the best man at your wedding?
He was. Gosh, do I have a photo of that anywhere?
Adorable.
Oh, and he is just the best man.
He is the best man. So he's so funny. We called each other. He was living in New Jersey. I was living in Tribeca in Manhattan, and our drum teacher and guitar teacher knew each other. They were pals. And so our teachers had the idea that we should all get together at the end of the month long of the one-on-ones just to like, okay, let's see what, let's do this together as a group. So that was a great idea. So the night before we met, we had each other's phone numbers. And so it was one of those situations where we started the phone conversation and it just went into the night, like sitting on the floor. I think we talked for over 2 hours on the phone. And we just kept going and going and going and going and going because we were excited. We were like about to launch into this Tom Hanks movie together. And I remember at the end of the conversation, Steve said something like, I can't believe we've been talking for like 2 hours. This is either like the greatest friendship or we just hate each other. And nobody really makes me laugh like Steve. He is the funniest person I actually know on this planet.
Yeah.
Even when he's so pissed off and ranting, it's the funniest rant you'll ever hear. So then we went and we played together with our teachers and it was just fun. And then we went and got a beer after that. Yeah, he made me laugh just about how he got a speeding ticket on his way there. You know what I mean? I was just laughing about everything. And we lived at the Oakwoods together. We just became pals. We did everything together. Our wives became best friends, which was huge. And we always say that if they hadn't become friends, that we wouldn't be together still. And yeah, he was my best man. Everyone cried when he gave his speech at the wedding.
Oh.
He said something like, marriage is, just when you think you can't give any more, you give more, and then when you think you've done giving more, you give a little more. And everyone's crying. It was sweet. And he was crying. And then later on, out by like the hot tub, we got married in the Cayman Islands at this resort, and we're out there and we're just having a beer and sitting over that. I was like, man, thanks. That best man speech was great. He goes, oh, that wasn't the real best man speech. Here it is. It's not give more. Marriage is you just take more. And when you if you don't know you can take anymore, you just take more.
This is really reminding me of his White Lotus part, by the way.
Yes, especially in like the Cayman Islands and the hot tub.
In the resort. And just being like, son, disaffected youth, teenage son who's just on his phone. Let me tell you about life and marriage.
I mean, he was the best man at my wedding, and he's still like my best pal. Like when he was doing Treme in New Orleans, I drove down there and we like hung out in New Orleans, and he was the mayor of New Orleans because that's who he is. And I was my first time being in that city was the best because Steve knew everybody, knew where to go, and we had the best time ever. And then this past summer, I was in Tennessee doing a Christmas movie with Dolly Parton. Was the best experience of my life. She's amazing. Oh, and Steve drove down from Kentucky where he lives, and we hung out in Dollywood, and he crashed our wrap party.
Places on earth I want to be is Dollywood with Steve Zahn crashing.
Oh, it was so fun.
I was so beyond happy to see him in White Lotus because I've never stopped believing in the Renaissance.
Yeah, he steals everything he's in.
The Renaissance.
Renaissance. No, he is. He's a real actor. I mean, he's brilliant. Yeah. He's just a real deal.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this very special B-Side in Sync episode. Thank you so much again to Tom Everett Scott, a.k.a. Spartacus, a.k.a. Shades, a.k.a. a total mensch.
Tune in again next week when we'll tackle another great on-screen needle drop. Journalist Stephen Kearse will join us to talk about the 1989 masterpiece, Do the Right Thing, and its opening anthem, Fight the Power. Until then, I'm your host, Aviv Rubenstein.
And I'm Rachel Brodsky. Thanks for listening.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.